Welcome to the course. So the course is called What the World Needs Now. My name is Vajrashura, and I'll introduce Amy, Jamie, and Laura, who are on the team, in a few minutes as well, or I'll let them introduce themselves. To give a sense of what we're going to be doing in the next wee while, let me just... sorry, I'm a little... It's been... Okay, great. So, I'll just share my screen and give you a sense of what we're going to be doing tonight. So, an overview of tonight's class. So, tonight we're going to be looking at our life in the Buddha's world, basically, the Buddha and the modern world. So, we'll be looking at the Buddha's life. We'll be looking at his world. We'll be looking at what enlightenment is. We'll be looking at the Buddha's response to the world that he found himself in. We're going to start then look at our own world and look at all the things that are positive and challenging about it in a very brief overview, and explore, well, what are we passionate about? What do we think the world needs? And also, I want to say a bit about working with despair, because often looking at the world, we can despair, basically, particularly in times like these. And then I want to talk about a particular example of a Buddhist response to the world's problems in the second half. And so and also we'll finish then with some home practice and some questions. So that's what we'll be looking at tonight. To give a sense of what the course will look like, and then I'll do some more introductions about the course itself. The course is over 5 weeks, and what we're going to, as I said, tonight we'll be doing the Buddha and the modern world. Next week we're going to look at how we can live well in a very consumer-driven world, where happiness is just another click on the internet away, or another product away, or so we're told, and what the Buddhist idea on that is instead. In week 3, we'll be looking at the environment and how we can respond, and what Buddhism has to offer in terms of the ecological crisis that we find ourselves in. In week 4, we'll look at technology and information overload, and we'll also look at responding to conflict in the world. And then in week 5, we're going to take a more Buddhist response, purely Buddhist response, in terms of we're just going to look at, well, how would an advanced spiritual practitioner live in this world? And in a way, it's kind of the culmination of what we've looked at in the previous weeks. So that'll be the 5 weeks of the course that'll take us up to December. And hopefully it'll be an adventure for all of us together. Just to say that the aim of the course is to explore some of these modern issues that are relevant in this world. We're not going to look at all areas. I mean, there's so many more areas that we could look at. When I originally ran this course, it was a 6-week course, and we looked at a few extra things like our relationship to money, politics, and so on. There's so much more that we could look at. So we're going to look at these areas, but I think the Buddhist response in each of these areas will feed out into the other areas as well that maybe we don't get as much of a chance to look at. And we're going to try and do this. It's we have 2 hours a week, so we're not going to do a deep delve into political nuance or anything like that, but hopefully there will be enough for you to take away to then go and do that kind of reading or exploration that you want yourself as well. Okay, maybe what we'll do then is we'll just a few housekeeping points. So we're going to be on Zoom for the 5 weeks, so you've obviously all got the link, or else you wouldn't be here. Do come back each week a few minutes early. The Zoom link will be the same each week, and we'll let you in a couple of minutes early, and we can kick off. We'll try and kick off the course at 7 if we can each week, and we'll be finished at 9. We won't tend to run over, hopefully. And we will be doing breakout rooms as well. So if you have a working microphone, or like on your phone, or usually your phone has a microphone, but if you're on a computer, external microphones are really good, but your computer usually has a good enough microphone. But it is good if you can participate in those groups. And with Zoom, if your bandwidth is really bad, if your internet's playing up, you can save a lot of bandwidth by turning off your video. And that will help you. If the sound is breaking up or something, you can turn off your video, and that usually makes it a lot better. But if you can leave your video on, it's nice to see you guys in the little boxes along the top as I'm doing this. And was there anything else? Oh yeah, with Zoom as well, we'll be muting everyone throughout this part when we're all together in the room, just because there's too many people to have any kind of conversation that's useful in these numbers. But you will be able to have, there'll be usually at least 2 breakout rooms in the night that you can chat in smaller groups, like groups of 4. So you'll have a chance to talk as well. If you have any questions at any stage, you can stick them in the chat box and I'll get to them. Amy is on the team and she is going to be the person who's the tech support. Jamie and Laura are also there. You can also look to them. But if you have a technical question or something, you can message Amy directly. Amy, maybe you could say that thing about if they're having problems with their sound to message you. If you're having problems with your sound, you probably can't hear me right now, but you can message Amy, and Amy's just going to say that in the chat as well. And if you don't know how to use Zoom, you can choose who to talk to when you hit the chat button. If you're on the phone, I think you have to choose chat from the menu, the 3 dots. If you're on a computer, it'll be an option at the bottom, I think. Yeah. Great, thanks, Amy. Okay, so Amy, could you spotlight all 4 of the team then, the other 3, when you're ready? If you don't have the newest version of Zoom, you might not see us all on the screen at the same time. You can look for them in the participants list, Amy. They're usually at the top, the co-hosts. Yeah. So I just wanted the team to introduce themselves. So I can go first. So my name is Vajrashura, and I've been practicing as a Buddhist and as a meditator since 1999. I live in Dublin. There's Laura now. I live in Dublin, and although I'm from Roscommon originally, and I work in the Dublin Buddhist Centre. I've been working in the Dublin Buddhist Centre since around 2002, and I was ordained and given the strange Buddhist name in 2007. So that's why I have the kesa around my neck. That's why I have the funny name. I'm an ordained Buddhist. You can always ask in the questions if you want to know more about that. And for me, what Buddhism gives me a way of living a life of meaning and living a life where I feel like I can engage with the world and help the world, you might say. So that's in a way, that's why I'm a Buddhist, and that's why I'm fascinated to look at this material. So Amy, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Amy, and I came to the Buddhist Centre around 2.5, maybe 3 years ago, and did my first introduction to meditation course, and since then it's completely changed my life really, and it's just been a really transformative feature of my life, and I feel like now that even just making friends and my whole sort of outlook on life is through a Buddhist perspective now. So it's been great, thanks to people like Vajrashura and Jyotika that's here as well. He did another amazing course recently. So yeah, that's myself.
That's great. And Laura, are you happy to go next? If you want to unmute yourself.
Hi everyone. So my name is Laura. My internet might not be great tonight, so I might have the black screen on for a little while, but I am here. And I know I look like I'm in a cave, but next week I'll be back in my normal abode and won't look like I'm in a cave. I've been going to the Buddhist Centre for maybe 4 years now, and I'm a mitra. So that's a mitra is when you kind of formally decide you're Buddhist, or you feel like you're Buddhist. And yeah, like Amy said, like it sounds a bit like naff to say, but it does really transform. It can really transform your life. And something that, like Vajrashura said, like be able to live a life of meaning, or kind of give your life meaning, and be able to engage with things really wholeheartedly. Just like that, it can transform how you live your life. And I'm very much looking forward to this course because I haven't done it before, so I'm very grateful to be asked to participate. So thanks very much.
I'm muted. Thanks, Laura. That's great. And Jamie?
Hey everyone, my name is Jamie and I have just moved back from London. This is like my first kind of event I've done with the DBC, but in London I was involved with the London Buddhist Centre since 2012. I think I became a mitra in 2013 or 14 or something like that, and did the Mitra Studies course there. I've just recently, I moved back about a year ago, and then I was living down in Cork, and then when COVID-19 happened, I came back to Dublin, and here I am. And now I've been getting in touch with the DBC. I'm a part of Mitra Studies group with Vajra Shura and Jyotika. Is it Jyotika? Yeah, and yeah, things are going well, and this is my first course, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. So, Amy, if you could spotlight me again, then that would be great. Great, thanks, Amy. So in a couple of minutes, then we're going to go into breakout rooms. So what we're going to do, it would be lovely. I would really love to sit here and hear from all of you. You know, I'd love to go through and just hear from all of you why you're here. And if we're in person in the centre, there might be, this course probably have a maximum of 20 people, and we could do that. But I think there's 39 now, so we're not going to be able to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into small breakout rooms of 4 people, and it'll just be for 8 minutes. So what I'd like you to say, maybe Amy, you could share the questions in the chat. What your name is, obviously just share your name with the other people. Maybe if you've done much in Buddhism before or meditation before with the DBC or not. And is there anything that particularly brought you to the course? And, you know, is there anything you particularly feel the world needs, and what do you need yourself, actually? So what does the world need? What do you need? So you don't have to answer all those questions, but that's the general thing that I'd like you to have a look at. So say your name, what your experience of Buddhism is, or the DBC, if you've learned to meditate, anything that particularly brought you on the course, and what does the world need in your mind? What do you need right now? And if you're in the groups, just keep an eye on the time. So the questions will be in the chat, but keep an eye on the time. So some of the groups will have the team there in Jyotika, and they'll take charge of the time. But if you're not in the group with one of the team, maybe one person just takes charge of the time, because you'll see a timer in the top right, and just make sure the last person to go, you could go around, the last person to go has enough time to speak. And maybe one person could just go and they could just nominate the next person, if you see what I mean. That keeps it moving. So Amy, will you share the questions now, or do you want me to do it? Best to share them before we go into the rooms.
I will share them now. Sorry, I'll just get them in there now. I was writing them on paper instead of into the...
I shared them earlier with you. I can do it if you're doing setting up the rooms if you want.
I just have the questions from the second group.
Oh, I have them here. I'll share it now.
I only have them. I don't have them for the first group.
That's fine. Okay, so I've just put the questions in there for the first room, and Amy, you can invite people then to go to the rooms, and you'll get a notification then to come back into the big room again. Great. Okay. Are there still people in the rooms, Amy?
Yeah, I think so. Coach is coming back in now. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there they are now. Okay, I think everyone's back now. Okay, yeah. You're all very welcome back to the group. So it would be great if some of you wanted to just put some comments in the chat. It would be lovely to hear if that was okay, or anything that struck you, or any reason why you wanted to do the course. And we can come back to it in a few minutes. Then feel free to type that in if you want. So what time are we now? We're 7:30. Okay, so while you're typing, I just want to say what we'll be doing next. So we'll be having a tea break around 8, or a leg stretch around 8 for 5 to 10 minutes or so. And what I wanted to do before that is look at the Buddha's world and look at our world. The tea break might be probably 10 past 8. But before we do all that, I thought it might be good just to do a very short body scan, just to help us more fully arrive. So we've been arriving, we've been hearing about what the course is going to be, and we've now had a breakout room with other people, which can be quite stimulating. So so do put any comments in from the groups there if you want. But why don't we just more fully arrive now and settle into being here. Being on Zoom can be a bit of a disembodying experience, you know, it can really bring us up into our heads. So I quite like doing a body scan, just a short one at the start of towards the start of these courses. So what I'd recommend, even if you've never meditated before, is just don't worry about getting into meditation posture or anything. You can if you want, but the main thing is just get comfortable, sit reasonably upright. Make sure you can sit upright and at the same time relaxed. But if you want to lie down, that's fine too, but just watch out for falling asleep. Closing your eyes when you're ready. And this will only be a few minutes, but we can really make the most of them by opening to what our experience is, particularly our experience in the body. So maybe first of all, just after we close our eyes, tuning into the points of contact that we can feel between our body and the chair, our body and the floor, our body and the cushions. So we don't have to do any more than that, just tuning into the feelings of contact. And then feeling, while staying in touch with the feelings of contact, can we notice our breath as well? Can we notice the body breathing? The breath down in the body, the movement of the chest, the stomach. In fact, our whole body moves when we breathe. Can we feel this movement as we breathe in, as we breathe out? Can we breathe up from the floor and back down into the earth? Breathing up from the earth, breathing back down into the earth with the body. Like waves rising and falling. Can we feel the arms and the hands? Can we feel our stomach, particularly as we breathe in, as we breathe out? Can we feel our legs? Can we feel our feet? Can we feel our shoulders and our neck and throat? becoming aware of our face, checking the face isn't frowning or we're not grimacing. The eyelids are just closed, the jaw is relaxed. Allowing any tightness or strain behind the eyes, in the brain, to relax, to ease, to let go. And coming back down then into the heart, into the chest. Just feeling the breath here for the last few moments. With each in-breath, drawing up energy from the earth. With each out-breath, just letting go into the support of the earth. And then when you're ready, starting to broaden out your attention, listening to the sounds that you can hear, the sounds of my voice, the wind outside, noises in your house. So actively listening to broaden out your attention once more. And starting to reintroduce movement as you listen. When you're ready, then we can reopen our eyes. Okay, so that's just a short body scan. It's a nice thing to do to help you ground and arrive, help one ground and arrive. So thank you for your comments. Feel free to put in any comments from the group still. I didn't give you much of a chance to do that there, but if you want to, you can do it. So thanks to Deirdre, justice and love are her goals. And Paul is talking about how someone would like to experience more Zen, which is great. And one or two direct messages as well, which is great. Thanks for that. Okay, so I wanted to talk a bit now about how the Buddha's world is, and I'll talk a bit about how our world is then, and then we'll have another chance to digest that together in small groups. So I'm going to talk for probably about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes. So, and if you have any questions at any stage, you can stick them in the chat. Very happy to answer those. So I don't know the varying degrees of knowledge people have about Buddhism, but I just want to tell just the story of the Buddha very briefly and what the Buddha's life is like. You may have heard this already if you've learned about Buddhism before. So the Buddha was born 2,500 years ago in India, in what is nowadays Nepal, actually. He was born, there's differing accounts, but the main consensus seems to be that he was the son of a ruler of a small republic in northern India. There was a lot of small republics formed then at the time. And he is said in the stories, again, we've no way of knowing if this is completely true, that he led a life of luxury and opulence. You know, he wanted for nothing growing up. But he was dissatisfied and he left it all. He left his home and all his everything there to seek out spiritual answers to life's great problems. And in particular, he was concerned with, as a lot of people in India were concerned with, and indeed a lot of people in the West, in Greece and places like this at the same time were concerned with, is the problem of dissatisfaction. Why do people suffer? Why aren't we happy? What would be the path to happiness and truth? So he spent a number of years, around 6 years, wandering and meditating as a homeless wanderer. And there's so much that could be said there, but for time, I'm just going to keep it brief. But he eventually sat down in a place that's nowadays called Bodh Gaya and meditated under a tree until he was enlightened. And he became a Buddha. His name before that was Siddhartha Gautama. And he became what's called a Buddha. So a Buddha is a title, and it literally means someone who has woken up, someone who has awakened. Yeah. And for the rest of his life, for the rest of his 45 years, he wandered around northern India, living homelessly, teaching his teachings of Buddhism, which we call the Dharma. So the Dharma means the truth, or the teachings that lead to the truth. And he had many, many followers who took on these practices, and many of them gained enlightenment like he did as well. And he had many followers who were what you might call full-time, well, we'd call them monastics probably these days. That wasn't quite the term back then, but they were like full-time, what we call monks and nuns, who lived homelessly and begged for their food and practiced meditation intensely in the forests and the jungles. He also had many lay followers who didn't want to, or couldn't, or weren't in a position to live as monks and nuns, but who still followed his teaching. So there was people from all walks of life. It said that he had followers and people who practiced his teachings who were kings, who were merchants, who were courtesans, who were criminals, who were farmers, from all walks of life. And his community, and in Buddhism we call his community the Sangha, the spiritual community, were drawn from all walks of life, men and women, from all kinds of castes and all levels of society. So the caste system was present in the Buddhist time, if you're familiar with that, which is kind of like a classification of where you are in society. I'll return to that later on tonight, actually. And his teachings were wildly successful. And after his death, Buddhism went on to be the biggest religion in India, the dominant religion in India for many, many years. But anyways, he died as an old man at 79 or 80. He compared his body at this stage to an old cart held together with twine and glue. And he died in a place called Kusinara. And his final words were, "All things are impermanent. With mindfulness, strive on." And he was cremated there, and his remains were buried in various burial mounds around India. So in brief, that's the story of the Buddha. So the main thing that defines the Buddha is that he gained enlightenment. So just to say what enlightenment is, in brief, and I'm working here from theory because I'm not enlightened. If anyone is enlightened, you can let me know, and I'll let you teach the rest of the course. But what enlightenment is from a Buddhist perspective is that it's the seeing of the true nature of things, seeing how things really are. In the deepest level of truth possible. It's sometimes described as in terms of what it's not. So it's going beyond any kind of fixity of self, fixity or stuckness of self. So instead, we experience things as just a complete, wonderfully beautiful flow, instead of being stuck with ourselves. But you could also look at it in terms of expanding out what we consider to be ourselves to include everyone, actually. You could look at it that way, everyone and everything. So you are just as important as me to an enlightened person. You could also say there's a strong emotional element to enlightenment. So in one text, it's called the heart's release, which I really like. I like this idea of the heart's release. So you're releasing into unconditional, unobstructed love for all beings. You're releasing into a boundless empathy for all living beings. That's the more kind of emotional side of it. But it's also described as well as complete liberation and freedom from any restrictions that block your energy. So enlightenment is described very much in terms of energy, to be able to respond to the needs of the world, energy in yourself, a complete freedom from any kind of internal, spiritual, emotional, psychological restrictions or conflict. Yeah. And with that comes a great release of blissful energy. So That's what the Buddha said enlightenment was, and that's what his followers described it as. I have confidence that that is the case. I've been practicing for about 20 years and I'm not there yet, but certainly I've had enough tastes of it to think that it must continue and deepen as long as you keep practicing. So I have no reason to doubt enlightenment. But that is what the Buddha experienced. And then as a result of that experience, he went back to the world then after kind of withdrawing from the world in a very different way. And in a way, his response to the world is what this course is exploring, you could say. And looking at the Buddha's time, some things were very, very different to now. There was a very rigid caste system forming at the time where your place in society was determined by your birth. And it was very hard to move beyond that. One station in life was predetermined by the family you were born into. So if you're in a low caste situation, you could be in a very difficult situation indeed, or a very hard life. And if you were lucky enough to be born into a Brahmin caste, you'd kind of rule the roost, so to speak. The roles of men and women were very traditional and very traditionally separated. It was very much a farming society where family obligations were very strongly emphasized. There wasn't what we'd nowadays called Hinduism as such, but there was a widespread and very varied system of kind of paganistic spiritual traditions with beliefs in local gods and local spirits. And there was also the Vedic system of the belief in the eternal soul at the time as well, or the Atman. And connected to all that, there was apparently large-scale animal sacrifice as well in the Buddha's time. And these sacrifices were done to influence the universe so that it would keep turning on smoothly. That was the local beliefs at the time. And it was also a time, particularly in the Buddha's life and afterwards, of growing bloodshed and empire. The Buddha's own tribe that he came from were actually ethnically cleansed near the end of the Buddha's life or shortly after, and these massive empires started growing as well. So it was a very challenging time for in the Buddha's time. So, the Buddha was there then walking around northern India and trying to wonder, I guess he was probably wondering like we do, what does the world need? How does one respond to that? And the Buddha wasn't particularly political in a certain kind of way. He didn't form a political party or anything like that. What he did was he met people and he responded to them and moved them and helped them to wake up themselves to what he had seen. So he really, in one place he says that he teaches that there is suffering in the world and that there is a path beyond suffering in the world. And what he did whenever he met people was try and help people move beyond any kind of suffering in the way that he had. He got one of the big things. He was quite a subversive character in some ways, in that he totally worked to undermine the caste system at the time. So he very much didn't believe that your value was set by your birth, for example. He undermined those kinds of traditions. So he wasn't just a very nice guy, you could say. In some ways, he was quite a troublemaker, some people found him. And one of the big things that he did was that he formed a spiritual community of people around him, men and women who wanted to practice with him, men and women who wanted to also gain enlightenment and look for that question of what truth is. Yeah. And he created conditions for a simple living where people could pursue their spiritual lives. He even personally intervened in armed conflict at times. There's a story, we'll hear it later on in the course about that. And also his practices led to, were very much rooted in loving kindness. And apparently his teachings led to a widespread abandoning of animal sacrifice and that as well in India during his life and after his life. So he had quite a strong influence on Indian life that eventually obviously spread throughout the world after his death. And again, his position wasn't a political one. It was simply a desire to meet people deeply and help them see what's most meaningful and help them move beyond their dissatisfaction, I guess is probably a better word. And it was a full response to the person. He would really take in the person and fully respond to them. And that, in a way, that's what I think, that's kind of all that we can do in some ways. We can only respond to the people that are in front of us, can't we? So I'll come back to that later on, but I'm quite struck by that response. So the modern life that we live in then, to move on to that, is very, very different in some ways to the Buddha's time. There's so much to be rejoiced in the modern world. I'm so grateful for modern medicine. There's more news coming through by the day of the vaccines that might happen for COVID. I'm so grateful that we don't suffer anything like we used to with early death and disease. I remember being quite struck reading a couple of years ago about a book about the Middle Ages where, if a woman was giving birth to her first child, there's a 1 in 3 chance that she wouldn't survive that. Those kinds of conditions are just unknown to us these days, certainly in the modern West. When I wrote this course, I said I was very grateful that we didn't get any huge epidemics like the Spanish influenza. Now we have that now, but at least we don't have the same kinds of death rates that they used to have, where I think there's something between 50 and 100 million people, they reckon, died of Spanish influenza. So thankfully we're not there. We have the internet, so we can connect like this. We have unbelievable technology. We have unbelievable transport where you can fly around the world in normal times. We have huge literacy. We have amazing, all kinds of amazing technologies. So there's so much to be grateful for in the modern world. We also, and I think we underestimate this, have the time to come and do these courses and to practice meditation. In the Buddhist time, you might have been spending most of your time out farming or something like that, depending on your station in life. But there's also a lot to be really concerned about in the modern world. There's the sheer scale of suffering that we can see in the modern world is kind of unprecedented. I was thinking about this recently, and one of the things that really strikes me about the modern world is that you can find out everything that's going on in the world, all the problems of the world, with a few clicks. Or even not even a few clicks, it can appear as a notification on your phone. So you hear about the hurricane landing in Latin America, yesterday. You hear about all the election shenanigans going on in America. You hear about death rates all over the world from COVID. You hear about all these things that are happening in the world, and yet you're offered no way to respond in a way that can help most of the time. I think having the knowledge of what's going on, but without a clear way of being able to respond. It's quite a modern phenomenon, and it kind of leads to powerlessness, and leads to feeling like you want to do more, but you don't know how, and I don't know if it would have been quite the same as that in the Buddhist time. We also have, the world is much more linked up now, and as a result, we're all in it together now. So when you look at things like nuclear weapons and the environmental difficulties that we're having, there's such a worldwide problem in the way that they were never before modern times. There's so many problems with technology and social media and information overload, and we'll be looking at that later on in the course. And we also perhaps live in an age of greater cynicism and nihilism these days, where people are really hungry for meaning that isn't as clearly as available as it would have been in times past. So it is in a way, it's quite a different time these days to the Buddhist time. So it's kind of hard to know how to respond to that. And in a way, this course is trying to look at, well, how would the Buddha respond, and what can we take from the Buddha's teachings to respond to the world. So I hope I haven't depressed you there with all the world's problems. The Buddha. Well, I can speak personally, I guess, but like while I'm keenly aware of the problems of the world and I feel very passionate about them, I think the great thing about the Buddhist teachings, the Dharma, is that it gives you a creativity and a space and a creative response, I guess. I'll talk a bit more in a few minutes about responding to despair, and I think that's been a really useful part of that's come from my Buddhist practice as well. But maybe what we could do now, just to break up so I'm not just talking all the time, I thought what we could do now, if it's not too if it doesn't break the flow too much, we could go back into our groups, and it would be great if we could, Amy, will you share the second bout of questions if you have them? What I'd love you to talk about again for maybe 8 minutes again, that's about 2 minutes each. What are we passionate about? What would we most like to change in the world right now? You might have already touched into this in the first discussion group. What are we most passionate about? What would we most like to change about the world right now? What stops us from acting, and what inspires us to act? Yeah, what stops us from acting and what inspires us to act? Maybe that's a more important question. And is there anything that strikes you about the story of the Buddha, or anything I've said so far? So we'll go into groups and then we'll come back and maybe we'll hear from a few people in the questions in the chat box, and it'd be great to hear from a few of you. So we'll see you back here in a few minutes. Amy, I think there's a few new people have arrived as well, so you might want to put them in a group. Welcome if you've just arrived, by the way. And we'll see you back here in around 8 minutes again. Okay. Great, you're all very welcome back. By the way, we've just noticed that some people have arrived quite a bit late, and maybe some people thought it was 7:30. So if you have arrived, you're very, very welcome to the course. So my name is Vajrashura, and yeah, you're very welcome. We will be recording. I should have said this at the start, but there will be quite full notes every week, and that I'll send out to you probably by tomorrow morning. And we're recording it, and I'll make all the videos available each week as well. So if you miss something or miss the start or miss a week, you can catch up. You can watch it as if it was live, if you see what I mean. Maybe it'd be great to hear from a few of you. If some people were happy to type in the chat box anything from the discussion groups or any responses you have to anything so far or any questions. So what we'll do is we'll just spend 5 minutes to see if there's any questions or comments or anything you want to share, and then we'll take a leg stretch or a comfort break or a tea break or whatever you want to call it. So it'd be great to hear from a few of you anyway. So Sam says, great chat with Deirdre, Dag and Vince. Themes of abandoning materialism and orientating outwards from the self to the community, alleviating suffering in our communities. That's great. I'm going to be talking about that next, Sam, so that's great. Yep. Thanks for that. Good to hear you had a good chat. I think breakout rooms can often be the most enjoyable part of the evening, actually. You get to meet people more personally. I can hear typing going on. Great. Does technology have a detrimental impact on spirituality? Well, we'll look at that in week 4. It's Paul, isn't it? Is that right? Yeah. Or is it Peter? Sorry, I can't quite remember. Paul. It can and it can't. I mean, if there was no technology, we wouldn't be here learning the Dharma tonight or exploring the Dharma together tonight. And at the same time, it's deeply compulsive and addictive. So I think there are pluses and minuses. And one of the things I think we need to do with technology is to be able to do without technology, you know. So one of the main themes in week 4 will be, you know, are you able to be on your own, actually, you know, without technology while still benefiting from it as well. So, I mean, I love technology. I have to say I'm a tech gadget lover. So, yeah. Elaine talked about the suffering world due to the rat race and caught up in the matrix. That's great. We also talked about the need for more wellness in the media rather than the constant bad news. Yeah, I think it's no harm to have a news detox every now and again. I was on a solitary retreat for nearly 2 to 3 weeks there a while ago, and before the lockdown and before the most recent lockdown. And I went away and there was no news. I left all the news and I came back. It was exactly the same. Nothing had changed, you know. Just the dates had changed, and that was about it, you know. And the world keeps rolling on, even if we don't compulsively follow the news. It's quite surprising to hear that, but there you go. In my group, we felt like there was so much to change and it was hard to know where to start from. Yeah, good. That is, well, not good, but that is true. I totally empathize with that. And hopefully we'll be exploring that a bit more now. Angie had an amazing chat and talked about disconnection and the importance of mental health issues and meditation. Great. Yeah, I'd really recommend meditating. We're not going to do much meditation on this course, but do learn to meditate. You can learn with us. You can learn wherever you learn to meditate. We have I mean, maybe what I'll do is I'll email people our meditation course and you can watch. It's all on YouTube, so you could just catch up there if you wanted to as well. I think Jyotika just finished teaching a Buddhism and meditation course as well, so that's all on the website too, on our YouTube. Julianne, injustice, loss of spirituality, loss of community, more kindness needed, better use of technology. Yeah, we'll be touching into all of those hopefully. Greta says common themes of making the world a fairer, kinder, more inclusive world. Yeah. Jyotika reports that the food, vegetarianism is a big issue. Ecological issues such as the meat industry, topsoil erosion, overuse of plastic. Yeah, they're all really big issues. Deirdre says, I'm a pre-technology person, so it is a good tool but not consuming. That's great. Curry says she loves the philosophy of loving kindness that seems to emanate from the Buddha. And he was such a rebel. That's great. And yeah, just some comments about technology that it can be helpful. So that's great. And Jamie's group talked about the courage to change for the better. Yeah, it does require courage. Stepping into something that will bring about positive change and have a positive impact on the world. So yeah, that's all really great to hear. So in a way, quite a few of you, I mean, I think you wouldn't be here unless you're idealistic about wanting to help the world. You just wouldn't have come. But I think everyone wants to, help the world. I do believe. Well, I think I can say that everyone I've ever met has. I think even if it's very quite deep. I mean, don't ask me about Donald Trump or the like, but I do think most normal people want to change the world for the better and be a force. And also, it's very difficult to know where to begin. Yeah. So maybe the place we'll begin is tea break. Tea is very important in helping to change the world. So why don't it's 8 minutes past 8. So why don't we try and be back ready to go at 18 minutes past 8 if that's not too precise, okay? So feel free to turn off your video and do what you need to do, and we'll see you back here in 10 minutes, okay? And I'm just going to mute everyone. I just wanted to flag about the course itself that, let me just share my screen here with you. So the course is being done on a completely, it's what's called a Dana basis, a donation basis. And since the lockdown has happened, we've just put all of our courses online for free. And we're just happy that people come along and benefit from it and can use the Dharma, use the Buddhist teachings in these difficult and challenging times. But we would ask that if you're in a position where you can, just as we're giving to you, if you're in a position where you can give back to us and help us by donating money, that would be really great, because we're almost entirely dependent at the moment upon donations from fine people like yourselves. And in a way, I like that. I like that we help each other in that way. So I think the center really does have something to offer in terms of meditation and Buddhism. And then when you give money to the center by donating, you help us to do that with more and more people. And there is quite a direct link between our donations and us being able to give back to people then. None of the team here are being paid to teach the course. We're all doing this because we love the Dharma, we love the Buddhist teachings, but there are costs to keep the center going and so on. Even when we're not using the center physically, we have to keep all that going. So I think Amy's just put the links in the chat box. So please do donate. A course like this would typically cost, I can't remember exactly, but we'd probably ask people for about 120 euros if you're in person, or less if you're unwaged, 70 if you're, or 80 if you're a student. So you could give that if you wanted. You could give less, you could give more. It's up to you. Give as much or as little as you want. Give whatever you feel you can. And what you can do if you want to do that is, Amy just shared the link, I think. So you could just click on the link and leave it open in a browser behind and come back to it at the end of the night and then donate then if you want. Okay. And if you can't give now, that's fine. I'll remind you each week. Don't worry. Okay. And by the way, both of those links are the same thing in terms of donating. You can click on whichever one's handy. Okay, so I want to say a bit then about, what time is it? 20 past 8. I want to say a bit about a Buddhist response to despair, because I don't know about you, but sometimes the world's problems feel a bit too overwhelming. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else gets that feeling. I think some people have already said it in the chat. And I think one of our deepest fears when we're faced with the problems of the world, I'm very much concerned with the environmental sphere in particular, but also like the deep problems of a consumer society. And with both of those, I just at times feel like it's almost too much, and it can be easy to slip into a feeling that we're doomed and we don't want to look, so we look away. Yeah. And to be honest, Buddhism doesn't have any easy answers to this. But it does say that it's better to look and face our fears than pretend that they don't exist. So it's better to look and face our fears than pretend they don't exist. If we don't look, we're going to be just as affected by them most of the time. At least when we look, we have a chance of doing something about them. And I think the main reason and the main thing Buddhism has to offer here is that it points out that we're probably engaging with it in terms that are unhelpful. So we're probably engaging with it in terms of me here trying to save the world there. Yeah. Me here trying to help the world there. And the fact is that you cannot save the world. Okay. You cannot solve the world's problems. You also cannot destroy the world, in case that's a concern that you have. Yeah, you cannot save the world. You cannot destroy the world. You can't ruin the world. Okay, so you as an individual can't do that. However, we is a different kind of story. And I think the Buddhist answer, and Buddhists aren't the only ones, I think, who realize this, obviously, but the Buddhist answer is community, people coming together to share the problems and thinking. We need to think more in terms of a we than a me, if you see what I mean. So one of the first things the Buddha did was that he built a community around him. And one of the first things that what we call in Buddhism a bodhisattva, an advanced spiritual practitioner, does to try and help people is they build community. They build connections between people. They form harmony between people. They help people feel really deeply met. And I think we need spiritual community, whether our aim is just to be a better person ourselves, or whether it is to help change the world, or to both. And ultimately, from the Buddhist perspective, there is really no difference between transforming yourself and transforming the world around you. You don't do one without the other. You can't transform the world without transforming yourself. You can't transform yourself without affecting the world positively around you as well. So we need to come together. And there is a lovely saying from the Hopi Native American Indian tribe. I remember reading it there. It says, "The age of the lone wolf is over." So I quite like that phrase. The age of the lone wolf is over, if indeed there ever was an age of the lone wolf. And as I've said, the great hero in Buddhism, the bodhisattva, there's someone who is dedicated their life to the sake of enlightenment for all people, to help all people realize what's most deeply meaningful and truthful. And they build community. They're generous in a way that fosters connection and friendship. They speak well in ways to bring together people in harmony. They act for the benefit of all beings. And they also practice what they preach. They exemplify what they believe in as well. So their deeds match their words. And in a way, that's one of the most radical things I think we can do. Have our deeds match our words. Have our deeds match our ideals. In Buddhism, they're called the Samgraha Vastus, the things that bring people together. And I think the other thing that happens in a community is that our own individual actions get magnified out through a circle of people. Yeah. So our own individual actions just get magnified and ripple out more fully than we ever could on our own. But also we feel very enriched by community. We feel very enriched by meeting people. I mean, I'm very grateful to the Buddhist community that we have within our community. Our community is called the Triratna Buddhist Order and Community. Triratna being the three jewels of Buddhism: the Buddha, his teaching, and the Sangha, the spiritual community. And for me, what I feel most enriched by is that it's just lovely to meet people on the level of idealism, on the level of really wanting to be a good person in the fullest sense of that term, on the basis of what's most truthful, on the basis of what's most meaningful. And I think that I get that from spiritual community. I feel deeply met, and in being met by other people, I'm then much more supported and energized and wise. Actually, spiritual community brings about wisdom, I think, as well, to then go back into the world as well and help try and change it. And it might not feel like much happens at times, but there's you might have heard this quote, but Margaret Mead is a influential cultural anthropologist. I'm sorry, and she has this lovely saying. I'll just read it out. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Yeah. So the only thing that ever has changed the world, according to this cultural anthropologist, is a small group of dedicated people. Yeah. So if we are experiencing despair, just remember, you can't change the world on your own. You can't ruin the world either. And what we really need to do is to meet other people and meet them deeply. And out of that sense of connection with other people, then we will change the world. So maybe our first thing to do is to look for connection, actually. Look for connection. And that's hard in the age of Zoom, but even on Zoom we can do it. I really do miss community in the sense of being able to meet people fully in person in the same way, like in our sangha, in our community. Yeah. And thanks, Angie, for that comment. Yeah. One of the things about Angie mentioned social media there. We'll come back to that in one of the weeks, but it kind of gives the smell of connection, but without any real taste, if you see what I mean. So we have to watch out for that as a poor substitute. One of my friends calls it the bleary half-light of social media. So we need to be wary of the bleary half-light of social media as a poor substitute for real connection. Okay, and then what I wanted to talk about for a while then is, well, what would this look like? What would this look like? It's all a bit general. And I wanted to talk a bit about a real life example of this happening from about 70 years ago or so. And some of you will have heard of the work of Dr. Bimrao Ambedkar. He was an Indian, sorry, my camera's blurring. I just need to turn it off and on again. He was it's not quite fair to call him a social activist, but he was a spiritual, religious, political, cultural activist in India back in the last century. So I wanted to tell the story about him a bit and then draw out some of his teachings that I think are very, very relevant for us. So he was born into the Hindu caste system. He was born as an untouchable, or what was called an untouchable. He was born in 1891, actually. He died in 1956. And the caste system in India is this horrendous system of where, as I said earlier, your birth determines what you do with your life. It determines where you can marry, the kind of people you can meet, the kind of jobs you can take. And it's not only social, but it's also religious. So it is sadly underpinned by Orthodox Hindu religious teachings. So a higher caste person would believe that they would be spiritually polluted by being around a lower caste person. If you were an untouchable or a Dalit, as they're sometimes called, and you're walking down the road and a Brahmin was walking towards you, you might have to throw yourself into the ditch to avoid polluting that person's soul, so to speak. And there's great difficulties around water. Only certain people can drink from certain wells and things like that. And the lower caste, the untouchables, are meant to be subservient and obedient. And if they're obedient in that way, they will be reborn in a higher caste in the next life. Is kind of the loose teaching. And to give you a sense of the scale of it, there's estimated that there's about 300 million Dalits in India. So 300 million Dalits are people so low on the caste system that they're said to be almost below the caste system. Yeah. And Sangharakshita, who's the founder of our Buddhist community, is an Englishman but lived much of his life in India. He calls it a state of virtual slavery. It has been like a state of virtual slavery. And it's officially illegal nowadays in India, but it's still very widely practiced, particularly in the villages outside of the more modern cities. Yeah. So Dr. Ambedkar was born as an untouchable in Maharashtra in central India, and he experienced tremendous caste prejudice growing up. And fortunately, he was able to get an education because his father served in the British forces in India. And he studied in New York and in London and gained 2 doctorates. And he gained a level of education really unheard of in his community. It was very unusual. And when he went back to India, he decided to challenge the caste system. He was working in government for much of this period in his life. He actually served as the law minister and wrote the Constitution of India. So if you ever read the Constitution of India, that was written by him. But he found it deeply frustrating working in politics. So even as the law minister of India, if he had underlings in his department that were of higher caste, they wouldn't go near him. And there were stories of them throwing documents across the room at him rather than go near to him because he would pollute them, spiritually speaking, So he eventually left politics in frustration because he saw that the caste system was mind-made. It was made by the mind. It didn't have any objective existence beyond what it was in people's minds. Yeah. And he started to discuss how he could help his people escape from the hell of caste, as he called it. And he saw that a spiritual solution was necessary rather than a political one. So a spiritual solution was necessary rather than a political one, because at the end of the day, the problem, the caste system was eventually made illegal, but it still existed in people's minds, and to this day, people still suffer violence. And it should be said, it's far worse than anything one would see or read about in apartheid in South Africa and places like that, as far as I can tell, anyway. So he decided to convert to a different religion. And after looking at different religions, he decided that Buddhism, because Buddhism places such an emphasis on the primacy of mind and transforming the mind, and because the caste system was mind-made, he said that he saw that Buddhism was the way to go for him. And in 1956, October 1956, with over 300,000 of his followers in a huge big arena, they all converted to Buddhism to escape the caste system. And after that, then millions more converted to Buddhism as well. Now, unfortunately, he died himself just 6 weeks after his conversion from ill health. And Sangharakshita, the founder of our community, was there at the time and did have interactions with Dr. Ambedkar, and was involved then with these first mass conversions, as they were called. But since then, anyway, conversions to Buddhism have continued, and there are probably about 20 to 30 million what's called new Buddhists in India now. And caste discrimination still happens, but they reckon that because in academic studies done on these new Buddhists, they've done a lot better than the people who haven't converted. And as a community, they've been increasingly confident and self-reliant. And I have lots of friends in India, Jyotika as well, who's on this course. I have lots of friends in India. And one of the big things that they talk about, and they say with such great gratitude, is that it was a change in mind, primarily. It was a change in heart, a change in mind. Because one of the worst things about the caste system was that you believed in it yourself when you were part of it. You believed that you were spiritually degrading to others, and you couldn't see a way out of it from within that system. So people are so grateful. He's deeply revered in India. And a large part of the movement to Buddhism, again, was helping people let go of their own beliefs about themselves and living with a much more positive system of practice. And Buddhism also, he was also worried about kind of the nihilism that he saw in the Western world, and he was very wary of that too. So he wanted Buddhism to offer spiritual meaning to these people when they broke away from their old systems of thought. And I want to just read out a quote. I'll share the quote on the screen, actually. I'm not sure if you prefer hearing it or reading it, but anyways. Where is it now? Hang on a second. So it's called his Dhamma revolution. So Dhamma is another word for Dharma. So this is his revolution that took place in the 50s in India and has continued to this day. So here's the quote. I hope you can see that okay. So he says, the first line isn't there, but the first part isn't there. History bears out the proposition that political revolutions have always been preceded by social and religious revolutions. The emancipation of the mind and soul is a necessary preliminary for the political expansion of the people. So it's a bit old-fashioned, the quote, but what he's saying is that the true revolutions are always spiritual ones, to paraphrase him a little bit. The true revolutions are always the spiritual ones. If they're not spiritual, they'll tend to fail. So if you really want to change the world, we have to start with the spiritual. And if we don't start with the spiritual, we'll end up back in a rigid system of oppression due to orthodox religion, or we'll end up in nihilism, which leads to inevitably consumerism and materialism. And he was very concerned as well with not just freeing his own people from caste. He was also concerned with freeing all the people of India from caste, because he saw that the caste system harms people who are the perpetuators of violence as much as the people on the end of violence. Yeah. And this was very similar. If you've ever, I don't know loads about Dr. Martin Luther King, but he had famously said that he was going to free the South from racism for the white people as well as the black people, So the white people who were perpetuating racism were also suffering from racism. So I think both of those visions are a spiritual vision of what humanity is, the unity of mankind, which is not purely a political one. Yeah. So I think that we need this spiritual aspect to anything we're going to do if we're going to change the world. And he talked in particular in terms of liberty. Sorry, Dr. Ambedkar talked in particular in terms of liberty, equality, and fraternity. And he said that these were not just from the French Revolution, but actually they were from the Buddha. And they're really expressions of loving kindness. They're expressions of loving kindness that is central to Buddhism. So I'll touch on these briefly, and then I'll finish. So liberty is the first one. So liberty is, I guess you could say, it's another word for freedom, isn't it? So we're trying to allow people to be free. So we're trying to, there's lots of different ways that you could talk about liberty. So you could, in terms of our interpersonal communications, we could try allowing people to be fully themselves without imposing our ideas upon them, without imposing our beliefs upon them, without wanting them to be a certain way. I think these days we probably tend to turn people into sources of pleasure or sources of irritation, unless we're in meaningful communication with them. So we're allowing them to be free of our own projected desires for pleasure or seeing them as irritants, if you see what I mean, allowing other people to be free or liberated from our stuff, you could say, from our views about them, and really just trying to see them as a creative human being when we meet them, who could surprise us in all kinds of ways. It could mean being free of the kinds of compulsive, addictive behaviors that consumerism engenders in us, So I don't know about you, but sometimes if I'm feeling a bit meh, I somehow magically end up on Amazon trying to find that perfect product that will keep away my unhappiness, So if a truly spiritual outlook on it, a truly spiritual evolution, well, we'd be free of needing to do that. We'd have a deep enough connection with reality that we wouldn't need to do that. A few of you talked about your interest in environmentalism, and we'll be looking at that next week, I think. But, we could see that as in terms of allowing people to be free of the suffering that our patterns of behavior inflict upon them. Conflict minerals, things like, I've been reading a bit about sea level rise lately, and most of sea level rise, and much more of the sea level rise, will happen at the equator, just due to simple physics. So the people who contribute the least to carbon emissions are probably the ones that are going to suffer the most. So a large part of environmentalism can be seen in terms of freedom, allowing people to be free of the suffering that our patterns of living would otherwise contribute to. Or in terms of vegetarianism, we're allowing animals to be free of the needless suffering that goes on in the meat industry. So liberty is the first of the three central elements of Dr. Ambedkar's revolution. The second one is equality. And this doesn't mean that everyone's exactly the same, because we're all very, very different. And I would hate for you all to be the same as me, because one of me is probably enough. But anyways, I think what it means more is that seeing that everyone has joys and sorrows, everyone has experiences rich and as multifaceted as we have. And if we could really see that everyone else's experience is just as rich and meaningful and as important to them as our experience is to us, then we would relate to the world very, very differently. Again, we'd move away from treating people in any kind of utilitarian way. We cherish all life, actually. We cherish them as much as we cherish ourselves. To quote Sangharakshita, he says that we need to consistently act on the realization that humanity is indivisible and intensify our commitment to non-violence with a more ardent and selfless love. So that's the equality, cherishing people as much as we cherish ourselves. And then the last one of the three is fraternity. So I think, maybe we need a better word than fraternity, because I think fraternity is more related to brotherhood, and that's not quite broad enough in some ways. But I'll just use the word that he used anyway. So fraternity is a willingness to act for the benefit of others. It comes out naturally out of liberty and equality. If we really want people to be free, if we really feel this kind of equality with other people, we will naturally act out of fraternity with them. And one of the most inspiring parts of the Buddhist text, of the Buddhist life, I think, is when, not long after he was enlightened, he built up a number of followers who too were enlightened like him. He had 61 of them, the texts say, which is a rather random number, but there you go. He had 61 of them, and he stopped them all, and he said the following to them. He said, "Go forth for the good of the many, for the happiness of the many, out of compassion for the world, for the welfare, the good, and the happiness of gods and men. Let no two of you go in the same direction. Teach the Dharma, or the truth, which is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, and beautiful in the end. Proclaim both the letter and the spirit of the spiritual life, completely fulfilled and perfectly pure." So I really love that quote. He says, you guys, every one of you, go and out. No two of you go in the same direction, so that you can meet as many people as possible and help them, communicate the Dharma to them, communicate what's most meaningful, this truth that is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, and beautiful in the end. See you, Deirdre. And help them in that. So I think these three qualities of liberty, equality, fraternity are rooted in this loving kindness. And they're a radical approach to the world's problems. Then maybe the last thing just to say is looking at Dr. Ambedkar, he tried to solve the caste system from within the caste system, and he realized he couldn't. So he had to go beyond the caste system. He had to take a much deeper spiritual perspective on the caste system to go beyond it and to leave it behind. And I think we have to do the same, whatever world problems concern us. So I don't think we can solve the problems of mass consumerism within the paradigm of consumerism. Yeah, I don't think we can solve the problem in the environment within the framework of the modern economic system that have caused it. Yeah, we need to go beyond it. We need to take a spiritual perspective on those problems. There's just, like Dr. Ambedkar with the caste system, the rules are just too much stacked up against us to work within that system, to change that system. Obviously, we have to interact with those systems, but we need a radically deeper spiritual perspective on these problems if we're going to solve them. And that's why I find in a way, I've never had to live like anything in the caste system. I'll never know the suffering that Dr. Ambedkar and his followers went through, but I think his example for me is a really good example of the primacy of needing a spiritual vision on the problems that I do suffer in my life. And most of all, we need this kind of awakening heart. We call it the Bodhi heart, the heart of awakening in Buddhism, this heart of wisdom and love to respond to the world with liberty, equality, and fraternity. And that's what we're going to be exploring on this course, and that's what we'll hopefully do ourselves as well in between the weeks. Okay, I feel like I've talked enough for one night. What we'll do is we'll go back into groups in a moment. But what I want you to talk about in the groups is I want you to talk about the home practice. So there's homework, I'm afraid, and there will be homework each week. So if you were to just come along here and listen to me and do a couple of breakout rooms, it'd be fine. It'd be fine. You'd have hopefully a good 5 weeks. It might take your mind off Christmas a bit and so on. But if you do the home practice, you'll have a much richer experience, and you probably will actually affect the world around you more fully. So the home practice then, and I'll email you this, but you can take it down as well if you want. So the home practice is up on the screen now. Again, I'll email you this. So what I'd like you to do is I'll email you out some notes in PDF, and you can print them off if you want to read them on your screen. Mostly it's what we've talked about tonight, to be honest. So, I mean, if you feel like you've taken in what we've talked about tonight, then don't worry too much about it. But there is a good bit more detail in the notes as well if you want to go a bit more into it. Clarify what it is you feel inspired to do to help the world. Okay. I'll break that down a bit more in a minute, because that's a bit of a big question. But what is it you feel inspired to do after tonight? And maybe in the groups, what we can do in a moment is you'll only have a few minutes each, but maybe you could say one thing you want to take away from this week that you feel inspired to do or you want to do, and then note what helps you do that and note what hinders you doing that. Yeah. So what helps you might be reading the notes or meditating or reading a bit more about Buddhism or something like that. And what might hinder you is stories about how you're never going to be good enough to change the world, you know, which you need to abandon, or things like that, or laziness might be what hinders you. So note what helps you and note what hinders you in your aspirations. And what I want you to do as well then is I want you to get a little journal, a little copybook. So, you know, you could just get a regular old notebook, something like, I don't know if you can see it on the screen, something like that, or a smaller little notebook, and keep it beside your bed at night and with a pen. And before you go to bed each evening, I want you to record 3 things that you feel grateful for in your life and in your world. Yeah. And they don't have to be big things. And they don't have to be, it can just be 1, this, 2, that, 3, that. Yeah. And we call this a gratitude journal. And it could be as simple as like, so my 3 today might be that I had a really lovely lunch with a friend, socially distanced in the park today. I've really enjoyed seeing you guys here tonight. It's been really lovely hearing the comments in the groups, from the groups and so on. And I could think of a third one before I go to bed tonight, yeah? And I want you to write those down in the book, yeah? And I want you to get into the discipline of doing that every evening. It'll take 5 minutes. It'll take 5 minutes. Let's just see, there's a question popping up there, I think. Okay, that's fine, Mary. And then write these up, and you could also take notes from the earlier thing about, you know, what helps you and what doesn't. You could do that as well. But also, maybe you want to record 1 thing that you'd like to work on the following day, yeah? And then you can kind of tune in how you did the following evening with that thing. And I'd encourage that to be really something very simple, like, I'm just going to try and take in people a bit more. I'm just going to talk to that person at, well, maybe you don't go to work these days, I don't know. I'm going to call my mum, you know what I mean, and have a chat to her. I'm going to make sure I do 20 minutes of meditation tomorrow. 1 thing, simple thing that you can do that's realistic. You don't have to promise to overthrow the whole of Western capitalism tomorrow or anything like that, you know. That would probably be a bit unrealistic. But maybe 1 thing that you could do, yeah. So let me know in the chat if anything's not clear. And what we're going to do then is Amy's going to send us into our groups. Amy, do you have the text put in the chat? Great, thanks very much. And I think it's really good to just say to people what we want to do. Yeah, it makes a difference between deciding to do something yourself, but also then saying it to someone else. So why don't we have about 6 minutes, Amy, for the groups, if you can set that. So share anything you want to take away from tonight, and just your thoughts about doing the homework. Are you going to do the homework? Are you going to buy a journal or get a journal? What are you going to need to do to get that happening? Yeah. And a few people have to run. That's okay. So 1 or 2 of the groups might be small. But Amy, you can stick us in the groups whenever you're ready. Okay, folks, so that's it. Don't forget, if you can donate, please do donate. Maybe Amy, you could put the donation links in the chat box again. And I hope you had a good evening. And it's laid the groundwork now for the next few weeks. So we'll see you back here next week for week 2 of the course. And best of luck with the homework. Do the homework. Just to urge you again to do the homework, because it will make the course much fuller and richer for you as well.